There is one carbohydrate that stands above the rest when it comes to damaging your health, and surprisingly, it is not sugar. Although sugar has long been labeled as the enemy, this particular carbohydrate causes even greater spikes in blood glucose. It is not classified as sugar, yet it behaves far worse in the body. It rapidly elevates blood sugar, promotes insulin resistance, and contributes directly to type 2 diabetes and fatty liver disease. Over time, it leads to visceral fat accumulation, the dangerous fat surrounding vital organs, and disrupts the healthy balance of microbes in your gut, creating inflammation throughout the body. This carbohydrate is industrial starch, often labeled on ingredient lists as modified food starch, corn starch, wheat starch, or maltodextrin. It is a refined, chemically treated version of natural starch, stripped of its nutrients and altered into a form that the body digests almost instantly into sugar. Unlike the starch found naturally in potatoes or vegetables, industrial starch is a laboratory product, a cheap filler used to bulk up processed foods. It offers no nutritional value, yet it makes up a large part of the modern diet. The average person unknowingly consumes between 65 and 250 pounds of this starch every year. It is present in countless packaged products, including gluten-free foods, baby formulas, baked goods, protein powders, and sports drinks. The food industry produces more than 20 billion pounds of it annually, and because it is heavily subsidized, it is extremely cheap to manufacture. This is why it appears in so many processed products, not for nutrition, but simply for profit. To understand why industrial starch is harmful, it helps to know what starch really is. A starch is essentially a chain of sugar molecules linked together. In their natural form, such as those found in vegetables or whole grains, these chains are protected by fiber and other nutrients, which slow digestion and help regulate blood sugar. But when starch is refined and chemically modified, those protective structures are destroyed. The bonds between the sugar molecules become fragile, and the body breaks them down into glucose almost immediately. The result is a blood sugar spike even higher than that caused by table sugar itself. During the industrial process, starch is subjected to chemical treatments to change its texture, color, and stability. Among these chemicals are sodium triphosphate, which has been associated with kidney stress and vascular calcification, vinyl acetate, considered a possible human carcinogen, and sodium hypochlorite, commonly known as bleach. Bleach is regulated as a carcinogen in water supplies, but not in food starch, despite its potential harm to tissues and enamel. Another chemical used in the modification process may interfere with mitochondrial function, affecting cellular energy production. All of these substances fall under the classification of generally recognized as safe, GRA, which allows manufacturers to self-regulate their use without long-term safety testing. This loophole enables industrial starch to enter nearly every corner of the food supply while bypassing rigorous evaluation. The consequences are clear: widespread chronic inflammation, insulin resistance, and the escalation of metabolic disorders across populations. When we examine the nutritional labels of processed foods, we find that starch often hides in plain sight. For example, a product might list 16 grams of total carbohydrates, with only 1 gram of fiber and 0 grams of sugar. The remaining carbohydrates, often around 15 grams, come from industrial starch. It is invisible on the label unless you know what to look for in the ingredient list. Inside the body, these starches break down into toxic byproducts such as aldehydes, the same class of compounds used in embalming fluids and produced during hangovers from alcohol. These substances contribute to oxidative stress, damaging tissues and accelerating aging. Over time, they can lead to the formation of plaques in the brain, fibrosis in the liver, and further insulin resistance, setting the stage for conditions like Alzheimer's disease and advanced diabetes complications. The problem becomes even more dangerous when starches are combined with seed oils, another common ingredient in processed foods. When starch and seed oils are heated together, they form a highly reactive and inflammatory mixture that damages cells and tissues. Consider common snack foods: chips, crackers, fries, and cereals. These items are typically made up of 60 to 80% starch and 15 to 35% seed oil. The combination produces a toxic synergy that promotes inflammation, obesity, and cardiovascular damage far more than either ingredient alone. For instance, potato chips are roughly 65% refined starch and 30% seed oil. Crackers can reach 70% starch. Breakfast cereals, often marketed as healthy, contain up to 80% starch with added sugar and oil. Even bread and pasta, which many consider staples, are dominated by refined starch, often combined with seed oils to improve texture and shelf life. The prevalence of industrial starch in the modern diet explains why metabolic diseases have become so widespread. Children derive about 65% of their daily calories from ultra-processed foods, consuming an estimated 55 pounds of industrial starch each year. Teenagers get up to 70% of their calories from these products, averaging more than 100 pounds annually. Even adults obtain more than half their total calories from ultra-processed sources, with nearly 70 pounds of industrial starch consumed each year. Industrial starch fails to meet the biological definition of food, which is that which is eaten to sustain life, promote growth, and repair tissues. It does none of these things. Instead, it depletes the body's systems, fosters chronic disease, and accelerates aging. Yet because of regulatory loopholes, it is legally considered food and continues to dominate supermarket shelves. When you scan the ingredient lists on processed foods, look for words like modified food starch, corn starch, wheat starch, maltodextrin, and tapioca starch. These are signals that the product contains refined industrial starches. Avoiding these ingredients is one of the most powerful steps you can take towards stabilizing blood sugar, protecting your liver, and reducing inflammation. In summary, while sugar often receives the blame for metabolic problems, industrial starch is a far greater and more silent threat. It elevates blood sugar faster than sugar itself, disrupts gut health, and contributes to nearly every chronic condition linked to modern diets. By becoming aware of its many hidden forms and minimizing its presence in your meals, you protect your body from one of the most harmful substances in the food supply. The next time you pick up a packaged food item, remember, it may not be the sugar or fat that poses the greatest danger, it's the invisible starch within.